Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Today, in this Tier 10 domination battle on the Northern Lights map, Jim Kirk 1 here, in the German Tier 10 destroyer, the Z-52, is going to present a textbook example of how to use this ship to its maximum. A lot of people will try to tell you that the Z-52 is not the ship that it used to be. This is, of course, nonsense. It is exactly the ship that it used to be. It always has been. It's never changed. The issue is that in a game whose business model revolves around constantly coming up with new stuff to sell to you, that does inevitably mean that older ships like the Z-52 are going to get power creeped. And yet, that doesn't mean the Z-52 is a bad destroyer. Quite the opposite. I don't think there's another ship in the game that better rewards careful, precise, and efficient use of your available consumables, which are fairly standard: smokescreen, engine boost, and hydro, than the Z-52 does. Because of course it does, it's German. What I mean by this, although I should probably make one concession here. I mean, I'm saying that the Z-52's consumables are standard, and they are, with the exception of the hydro. This is German high-tier destroyer hydro, and as such it has a 6-kilometre range. It's effectively a mini radar that lasts forever. But it's the cooldowns of the consumables, particularly when matched with the torpedoes, and careful, precise, and efficient management of the consumables on the Z-52 arguably make this thing the best destroyer in the game for contesting cap circles, which is exactly what Jim is about to do. But he's being smart about it. See, he's reversing into the cap circle. He's not in any rush, because he wants to be ready to make a quick exit if he needs to. Because there's at least one, potentially two radars on the enemy team, and he doesn't yet know where they are. He has, however, just spotted a much more immediate threat. There it is, the Hayate. So he's still reversing into, but is not yet into the cap circle. Second he gets spotted, he instantly triggers both the hydro and the smoke and starts unloading a 128mm high explosive on the enemy destroyer. The Hayate is now screwed. He's caught in what's known as the hydro trap. He's inside hydro range, he's smoked up out of reflex, but it's not going to do him any good. He's dumped his torpedoes, but hydro is running, so they're not going to do him any good. And despite the relatively low damage per minute of the 128mm guns on the Z-52, the Hayate is dead, finished off by the secondaries of the friendly Napoli. The torpedoes have been avoided. He's still inside the smoke, and he's now inside the cap circle. He did have to pop his engine boost there, which may seem like a bit of a waste, but if not for the engine boost while reversing, he might have actually caught some of those torpedoes, and he wasn't guaranteed to be sure to actually get into the cap circle before the last puff of the smoke expired, but he's made it. With nothing better to do while he sits in here waiting to cap, he angles the ship slightly while being very careful to make sure he stays inside that smoke screen in order to get all of his guns shooting at the enemy Libertad over there. Might be lucky, get a fire, might not. 32mm of high explosive penetration, by the way, with the IFHE skill, and he's got a fire, which is nice. Libertad is probably not going to extinguish a single fire, so that's going to continue to burn. Some more torpedoes spotted, but he was right at the outer edge of the smoke screen, and he had the hydro running, because as we all know, smoke screens are torpedo magnets. Meanwhile, there's the friendly gearing, day late, $1 short. So nice of you to turn up now that the threat's been eliminated and the cap's been taken, but hey, better late than never. The gearing was getting some crap in chat earlier, by the way, for not taking a particularly useful position. His defense, which you can see there in chat now before it scrolls up, was he's not Russian open water noob. Which, well, yeah, I mean, the gearing's a good ship, but it doesn't have the same harmony between its consumable cooldowns as the Z-52 does, so it's not an unreasonable defense. We'll keep an eye on him, see how he does. Meanwhile, he's gotten some torpedoes away against the bungo over there. That's a hell of a wide spread. Couple of things to point out here. Take a look at the mini-map. What the hell is the Hindenburg doing down there? I mean, I can only assume he was trying to get a torpedo drive-by off. Oh, and yeah, we'll talk about the Forrest Sherman turning up, just like the gearing, after the threat had been eliminated, and after the cap had already been taken. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can think of several other places that the other 2 destroyers on the team... Oh, the gearing actually did get 2 torpedo hits on the bungo. But I can think of plenty of other places that the 2 other destroyers on the team could have been, other than here, where all the heavy lifting has already been done by Jim Kirk, but whatever. Speaking of the Hindenburg, however, I'm assuming he was trying to go for a torpedo drive-by on the Des Moines, which failed. What exactly was his plan for dealing with the Yamato, Vermont and Montana that were 3 to 6 kilometers behind the Des Moines that he just sailed out in front of? I think we can safely assume that the Hindenburg was not much use to the team alive anyway. Meanwhile, Jim spotted a great opportunity. With most of the enemy team on this flank pushing for the cap circle at Alpha to the north, that means they've probably left cap circle Bravo wide open. And slipping into Bravo and taking it will also allow him to get behind those enemy ships up to the north. Meanwhile, the Gearing's just gotten himself into a close-range knife fight with the Daring, which is not a good idea under the best of circumstances, and when the Daring has backup and support from friendly ships, and the Gearing is on extremely low health to begin with, those are not the best of circumstances. Friendly Yamato's already gone down. But the friendly Grosser Kurfürst pulls one back by sinking the enemy Libertad, and that shot, yeah, that was a almost full health detonation. Which came as a great surprise to the captain of the enemy Daring. You can see him there in chat. Man, didn't they remove that shit? No, not quite. Oof. Oh, that was a remarkably good shot from the bungo. That basically wiped out almost all of Jim's health. And the Z-52 doesn't get a heal. Oh well, unfortunate, but hey, he's still alive. But yes, Wargaming are removing the detonation mechanic. The emphasis being on are removing, not have removed. It's currently on the public test. The detonation mechanic is going away. It is currently, however, still live. When they remove it, you will be receiving compensation for all your detonation flags and any equipment modules that reduce the chances of detonation. But it is going away, it's just not gone away yet. Anyway, Jim's eye on the minimap and spotting the opportunity that the enemy team have given him to take this cap circle at Bravo is now paying off, because as suspected, they have left it completely wide open. He's going to need to slow down here now, however. He does not want to sail out of the cap circle. Yep, he's reduced the throttle. There it is. So, Bravo has been flipped. There's another exchange of fire. Both teams have just lost a Napoli. The cap circle up at Alpha, however, has now just been flipped by the enemy team, and there's nothing in there to prevent it other than a U-4501, who's probably in no rush whatsoever to remain on the surface with the Summers closing in on him, which probably means the Summers is about to go undetected, and yep, that's a Minotaur. And we still don't know whether or not it's a radar Minotaur or a smoke Minotaur. I mean, it's probably a smoke Minotaur. You can probably safely assume that it is a smoke Minotaur, but as Samuel Jackson once said, when you make an assumption, all you're doing is making an ass out of you, an umption. I mean, you could wait to see whether or not he deploys smoke, and sure enough, we've lost sight of the Summers because the sub is submerged. There is another way of finding out whether or not it's a radar Minotaur, though. Just sail to within radar range and pop your smoke screen. You'll soon get your question answered, but you might not like it. Oh, he's popping smoke. Okay, good news. We don't have to worry about radar. But what we do have to worry about is getting spotted by the Summers if we try shooting at him. So there goes the Hydro. Now remember, this Hydro has a 6 kilometer range. It's very, very good, but the Z-52 is not the stealthiest of destroyers. It's not particularly unstealthy. 6.1 kilometer stealth, which is all right. It's not great. Anything less than 6 kilometers is great. But the Minotaur, by smoking up, has done him a huge favour, allowing him to get to within that 6 kilometer Hydro range without getting spotted, popping his own smoke screen so the Summers doesn't see him in return, and then unloading his armour piercing, because hey, why not? It's a light cruiser after all. But it's of course the torpedoes that get the job done. Now he's of course going to want to take this cap circle back, which isn't going to happen if he's lurking around inside this smoke, but he only needed the smoke to be able to take the Minotaur down without the Summers spotting him. The Summers does, of course, have a massive health advantage over him. And there is, of course, also an enemy submarine in this cap circle. Yep, there it is. But Jim does have something that the Summers does not. Overwhelming amounts of backup, and as long as there's a low health Forrest Sherman in the same cap circle, the Summers isn't going to be shooting at him. Of course, the second the Forrest Sherman goes down, which seems, yep, there he goes, the Summers is going to be shooting at him. So Jim really does need to make these shots count, low DPM or not, because with only 3 of them left alive against 6 enemies, they really needed that kill, and they really need this cap circle, and he is still sharing it with an enemy submarine. Although the submarine has submerged, there are the Summers torpedoes. Oh, there's a very convenient gap there though, you should be able to thread the needle there. And the U-2501, while he has gotten his own torpedoes away, he's left it way too late because shotgun torpedoes launched from point blank range basically do no damage. They have given him a double flood though, and damage control's on cooldown. Oh well, nothing we can do about that just now. Jim, killing the throttle, he wants to make sure he gets the maximum possible value out of these depth charges on that U-2501, while also ensuring he doesn't sail out of the cap circle, and he's got him. It's now 3 on 3, and he is continuing to take the cap. Damage control came off cooldown in the nick of time. He has barely more than 2,000 hit points. But, well, that's 2,000 more than he needs, really, isn't it? Still, it would be wise to chill out for a bit, which of course he's going to do. He wants to take this cap circle. Ah, there's another exchange of fire. The friendly Montana does take out the enemy Yamato, but the Yamato already had shells in the air and also takes out the friendly Montana. Well, he's taken his 3rd cap circle, he's scored his 4th kill. It's just him and the Libertad against what are unfortunately basically full health Vermonts, and despite the 2 torpedo hits scored by the gearing earlier, he's had plenty of time to repair, and he's also now a basically full health Bungo. The friendly Libertad, however, is anything but on full health. It is at about this point where Jim in the Z52 and Excalibur in the Libertad start exploiting the extremely rarely used and yet 100% free consumable communication. Excalibur's letting Jim know. I mean, Jim is perfectly aware of this, but it doesn't hurt to communicate. Jim obviously has the stealth advantage, and the Libertad does not have enough health to fight 2 full health tier 10 battleships. So between the 2 of them, with some input from another dead teammate who has not yet quit the battle, they come up with a plan. Jim's plan is to basically just drag this out as long as he can, while attempting to keep the 2 enemy battleships spotted. It's pretty obvious where the Bungo is. Somebody's flipping the cap at Charlie, which is where Jim's torpedoes are going. And the Bungo, because he's not stupid, has of course launched his spotter plane. The thing about the Bungo's spotter plane, by the way... Oh, and he gets a torpedo hit on the Bungo, and a cap defense ribbon into the bargain. But the thing about the Bungo's spotter plane, it's different to everybody else's spotter planes, well, except for the other Japanese high-tier battlecruisers. It not only provides detection and increases your gun range, it also makes those guns very, very accurate. And the Bungo's guns are pretty damn accurate to begin with, as evidenced by the snapshot that he took against Jim earlier that shaved off probably about 2/3 of his health. Between the 2 of them, they've decided that the Libertad is going to go the long way around the islands to the east in order to not get spotted and deleted by the Vermont, which you can see him doing there on the minimap, and then attempt to sneak into Cap Circle Delta from the rear. Meanwhile, it's up to Jim to keep these guys spotted and shave off as much of their health as he possibly can with his pretty rapid reloading torpedoes. I mean, the Z-52 is no Benham or Jaeger, but there was actually a time when the Z-52 had the fastest reloading torpedoes of any Tier 9 or 10 destroyer. But, well, yeah, those days are firmly in the past. Like I said, power creep. Now, obviously, despite the huge disparity in health between Jim and the Vermont and the Bungo, he does have the stealth advantage. So, 6.1 kilometers He just has to keep them both further away than that. And that shouldn't be an issue with the Vermont, because that thing is really slow. The Bungo, however, well, there was no way he was going to be able to successfully prevent the Bungo from flipping the cap at Charlie. You might be thinking he could have used his smoke and started shooting him to reset the cap, but that would have been a very, very bad idea for a couple of reasons. One, he's only got one charge of smoke left, and he may need it for emergencies, and two, he was the one spotting the Bungo. He's also the one spotting the Vermont. And the Libertad's survival depends on knowing which way the Vermont's going, and he would have at most gotten 2 or 3 salvos off, a couple more resets, and then would have also lost sight of the Bungo. So no matter what happened, the Bungo was always going to take that cap circle at Charlie. A lot now is going to depend on which way the Bungo turns after taking the cap circle at Charlie, because the smart money would mean he would turn south and head for the cap circle that Jim took earlier at Bravo, which would keep him out of line of sight and therefore undetected, and also out of range of Jim's torpedoes. Oh, the friendly Libertad having a bit of a panic moment there in chat as Jim stopped. He thought Jim had gone AFK. What a disaster that would have been. But no. Jim's paying attention to where the Bungo's going. And, oh, he's coming this way. Well, that's fortunate, because it means he's staying inside range of the torpedoes. And I think we're going to get at least 4 torpedo hits. Yes, it's not enough to sink him, but it is enough to give him the Confederate Award to go with the 2 devastating strikes. But now he has to make sure he keeps the Vermont at arm's reach, while the Libertad needs Jim to keep these guys spotted, because he doesn't have the health to take a full salvo from a Vermont. The Libertad needs to know where the Vermont is in particular, so that he can move forward and slip into that cap circle at Delta without getting obliterated by the weight of broadside fire that a Vermont is capable of pushing out. But it's cool. Jim understands the assignment. So Jim's just keeping his distance from and spotting the Vermont, and there's nothing he can do about the Bungo taking the cap circle at Alpha. Well, maybe not nothing. The torpedoes are about to come off cooldown. There's 1 salvo for the Vermont, but hey, you never know your luck. And 1 salvo for the Bungo. The angle isn't great, but he doesn't need a bunch of hits on the Bungo to sink him. Well, actually, he kind of does. These Z-52 torpedoes share a lot in common with the Pan-European destroyer torpedoes. Not just the fast reload, although not as fast a reload as the Pan-European destroyers. There's a couple, 3. Again, not enough to sink him. And they don't have the speed of the Pan-European torpedoes, but they do share the low alpha damage, which is unfortunate. Notice that the Vermont is not only flooding, but he's also on fire. That's a double fire. Thanks to Jim keeping him spotted, the Libertad is not only flipping the cap at Charlie, but he's also been working the Vermont over with his secondaries. But here's the weird thing. This is the first time the Vermont's been hit by anything in probably 7 or 8 minutes. So why didn't he use his damage control? He just flooded to death. Well, and he burned to death, but it was the flood that killed him. It's like he got hit and then just gave up. And despite the poor angles, Jim also got another 2 torpedoes on the Bungo. Again, not enough to sink him, but enough to crush his hopes and dreams. And also give Jim the Kraken Unleashed, along with the high caliber. This is the bizarre thing. The Bungo has basically been playing a pretty good game. He's been making all kinds of good decisions. His snapshot against Jim earlier almost decided the outcome of this game before it was even halfway through. He hasn't been sailing in straight lines at the same speed while spotted by a hostile destroyer. He has been manoeuvring. He's been using his spotter plane well. He's even been using his depth charge attack planes to try to see if he could trick Jim into firing his anti-aircraft guns and giving his position away. But Jim isn't falling for that old gag. His AA guns and secondaries, not that the Z-52 has any secondaries, but they were turned off right at the beginning of the battle, as they should be in a destroyer. He's unloaded a salvo down the bearing of the incoming torpedoes that he's just spotted as the Libertad opens up on him as well, but despite pretty much doing everything right, the one thing that he did wrong was coming up this way and sailing closer to Jim instead of heading for the relative safety of the cap circle at Bravo, which would have taken him away from Jim, and while it probably wouldn't have won him the game, with 30 seconds to go, with Jim's team at 980 points, Jim's torpedoes find the target, and it's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Oh, come on. You know there was no way I was going to do a replay featuring somebody called Jim Kirk without getting a Star Trek gag in there somewhere. 3,500 base XP and a textbook example of how to use the strengths of the Z-52 by Jim Kirk 1 here in this domination battle on the Northern Lights map. Hope you all enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.